This is a special birthday party edition of the morning show. You see, I look at all of my rap albums like my children. All my children. That reminds me of a Gucci Mane song that I might end up playing, even though it's got nothing to do with me. I just really like this one Gucci Mane song where he calls all these other rappers his children. All my children. All my children. My rap albums I look at as my children. When inevitably the internet reminds me of their birthdays, I look at my album and I'm like, happy birthday, you. I was informed by various accounts on the internet yesterday that Dark Comedy turned 9 years old. Dark Comedy turned 9 years old. If Dark Comedy was a person, it'd probably be watching Paw Patrol right now. It'd be pouting because I took its iPad away. It'd be really excited to go to the park and get on the big kid swings. Dark Comedy is 9 years old. I have to cover my eyes when I'm doing this so I can't tell if I'm doing it right. I have to put a mirror on the back of it to really do it good. This is the album cover. It's drawn by Brad Beatson. He did all of those, all of the drawings here and all the individual illustrations. Shout out to Brad Beatson. Haven't seen him. I figured one thing we could do that's kind of fun, so we can go back and see what critics were saying about my child shortly after it was born. That should be nice and awkward. Let's see what...
Hi everyone. Let's
see what the melon had to say.
The internet's busiest music
about
nerd,
Dark Comedy.
And it's time for a review of the new Open Mike Eagle album, Dark Comedy. Open Mike Eagle is a rapper based on the West Coast.
He rates people's children for a living. I don't blame him. It's a living.
And currently is a member of one of my favorite rap crews, Hellfire Club. Rhetoric Ramirez, Milo, Bus Driver, No Can Do, and others. All of whom I'm actually surprised don't turn up on this new Open Mike Eagle record.
That's a good point. Now let me tell you something about that. And this has been something that's been kind of consistent throughout my rap career. For instance, I was in a group called Thirsty Fish with Dumbfounded and Psychosis. When I made my album Unapologetic Art Rap, my first album, you won't hear much of the Swim Team or Thirsty Fish on it. There's one track that kind of has everybody on it at the end. But what happens with me, this happened with the Swim Team, this happened with the Hellfire Club, and this happened while I was making the New Negroes. When I'm making music in a collaborative or group environment, like, it's a cool process, but it's very different than the process that I'm used to in terms of making my own stuff. So it's always a little stressful for me to collaborate. So what ends up happening is after those sessions, so after Hellfire Club sessions, after Swim Team sessions, after a New Negro sessions, I would run home and work on my solo stuff. I'd get so deep into my solo mind because I was a little bit stressed out from having to collaborate. So we were making a lot of Hellfire Club music at the time. We made the Dorner versus Tookie tape. We were making what ended up becoming Catcher of the Fade. So when I was making my solo stuff, I was like deep in my mental silo bunker, walk-in closet studio, and just digging into my own ideas and mostly not rapping with other people.
Of the few features that are on this thing, among them are Kool-Aid
Beezy, what up?
Racist fame and comedian Hannibal Buress, whose verse on the track Doug Stamper might be one of the funniest things you hear all
Old glasses, Hannibal.
year. This album is relatively feature-free.
To this day, there's people who don't want to buy Honda Civics because of that verse.
For whatever reason, Mike essentially takes this record, grabs a bunch of producers, and says, I got this. And this thing is essentially 13 tracks with a handful of producers crafting different beats. It's not really quite as cohesive as Mike's last full-length LP, Animal Hospital, which was all produced by Awkward. But still, Mike comes through with a really enjoyable album of...
I met Fantano a couple of times. He's strikingly tall. It was surprising to me. He's a little physically intimidating. I wasn't quite ready for that.
Funny, clever, nerdy, soulful, playful, memorable, eccentric, left field art rap songs. Mike isn't one of those rappers
that should be in my bio
that's overly technical, has a really fast flow. He's not one of these guys that's going to talk tough and spit at you rapid fire really unemotionally. He's more of the softer, sensitive type.
Am I? Soft, sensitive.
But incredibly captivating, relatable, and hilarious. He is part eccentric
he's pretty swole
philosopher,
too.
part
He's a big guy.
charismatic free spirit, part introspective brain picker, part braggadocious psyche flexor. And lyrically, with this new record of his Dark Comedy, he is as on point as ever. Like with the trusty track off of this record, Qualifiers. One of Mike's best tracks in a while, a song that has been out and about on the internet.
My 9-year-old child is blushing right now.
Long before this album dropped. A track where Mike finds a lot to be proud of, a lot to brag about, in simply being a solid family figure. He moves on to say he might smoke you do in GoldenEye. He makes a really nice They Might Be Giants reference, which there are a couple of on this record, a really notable one on his last LP too. He even tells a short little story of going to Africa and blowing people's minds with his alternative style of hip-hop, and he says they're surprised it's free of bitches and hoes. And then there's the track Thirsty Ego Raps.
Sometimes when people say my lyrics, it makes me feel weird, and I don't know why. I'm exploring this feeling while we're sitting here listening to this.
A song that is simultaneously charmingly braggadocious, a little self-deprecating,
Mr. Clorox, good morning.
And really frank
K-Benz, what up?
About one's ego. And one of my favorite lines on this entire record comes out of this track, with Mike saying that he is the president of rappers who don't condone date rape. The speak and spell line that closes this track out is really nice, and I love the pitch string samples that play throughout this track.
My 9-year-old album is super blushing right now. It is so uncomfortable in here.
Funky, the melody is fun, it's sticky. Overall, the instrumentals on this record are a little clunky, they're a little lo-fi, they're a little tattered and torn and thrown together, but they do fit that really playful, laid back and quirky, colorful style that Mike brings to the table with his flow and with his lyrics as well. It's a match made in heaven, really. On the song Golden Age Raps, Mike comes through with a flow that is familiar because he's used it before. A rapper that he has a lot of influence on, Milo, has used it before, and with this track he essentially pokes fun at the current state of, I guess, creating art, creating media in the internet age. Mike also goes into more, I guess, sort of struggles of artists and creative types trying to make a living on the song Very Much Money, where Mike is talking about all these people who he seems to really look up to and admire and see as superheroes, see as people who can fly and speak Portuguese and make beats and deal drugs. He holds these people in high regard, but none of them make very much money. And this song and a few others reveal the only major Achilles heel on this entire record, and that is Mike's
Happy birthday, Dark Comedy. Here's your Achilles heel.
Singing. It is pretty flat or sharp, depending on which song you're listening to.
Actually, this is not an out of bounds criticism.
He's really raw.
I do like to sing more than I know how to sing, especially 9 years ago.
Upfront about it, and though in other contexts it might not work out for other artists, at least here I think it plays into the recurring theme that Mike is just a regular human being with flaws. Though he does seem so insistent on singing on his records, I don't
It's true.
see why there couldn't be at least some kind of technical improvement into the future.
Well, I think it has been.
As far as the straightforward rap tracks go on this thing, they're great. Drug Stamper, I love the Now
Drug
Problems
Stamper, that's not
referencing
what it's
that if you
called
have
at
any
all.
More than three, it's a problem, it's an issue. The Manzier line is hilarious, of course, like I said. The Hannibal Buress verse is fantastic.
Oh no,
Mike
I'm never going to
actually
stop
pulls
singing.
out a bit of a MF Doom flow, I would say, on this track. The song A History of Modern Dance, one of the best beats on this record.
Happy birthday, Dark Comedy. That's one of your best beats, says Fantano.
The best beat on this record, I think, and one of the best hip-hop beats of the year, with a really murky, heavy, low-end bass line coming out of this thing and some really eerie, high-pitched drones that are just sort of ear-piercing. This track really sets a tone, and I like what Mike is doing with this track thematically with his lyrics, talking about chance meetings and strangers coming together and talking about dance as maybe sort of a metaphor for attraction. But also there are lines thrown into this thing like environmentalist dance, sign a petition. And then there's the song Information.
His nostrils flared when he said to sign a petition. I'm not sure what that means. I'm not sure if that's a negative or positive reaction when your nostrils flare.
With Kool-Aid, whose verse technically isn't really fantastic. It sort of comes off as silly and comedic, sort of like Hannibal Buress's verse, but it works for the track. And as far as the instrumental goes, I think this is the closest the entire record comes to a legit banger. And then the album finishes off with a really melodic, moody closer with the lyrics and just this really beautiful female vocal sample in the instrumental. It's a nice finisher for this record. I think Mike came together with his
Happy birthday, Dark Comedy. You have a nice finisher.
most solid album to date with dark comedy. I think he's really come into his own with his delivery, with the topics that he
Let's start a crew called Rap Nostrils. Lex Pro. Everybody in the chat, we're a crew now. We're called Rap Nostrils.
continues to tackle in his songs, with the instrumentals that he chooses on his projects. There were a few songs on here that I was underwhelmed by, but that's really my only major issue with this LP.
Happy birthday, Dark Comedy. Some of you is underwhelming.
I'm feeling a decent to strong 8 on this
An 8.
thing. Transition if you've given this record a
I'd like to do an analysis of Fantano grades correlated with Pitchfork grades for my albums. See what that bell curve is like.
listen. What did you think of it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Why? What do you think I should review next? And that's it. Open Mike Eagle, Dark Comedy.
Happy birthday, Dark Comedy. You're an 8.